When my son died, my daughter-in-law coldly declared, "Don't dramatize, pack your bags and learn to survive." I lived in the car for 2 weeks, battling humiliation and cold. Suddenly, my son's lawyer called with shocking news. 8 million hidden in a secret clause. This call changed everything. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you are listening in the comments. This is my property now, Norman. Pack your things and get out. The words hit me like a physical blow. I stumbled backward, gripping the doorframe to steady myself. Lorraine stood in what had been my living room for 3 years, her arms crossed, new keys dangling from her manicured fingers. "Lorraine, what are you talking about? We just buried Kieran this afternoon." "Exactly." She stepped aside, revealing cardboard boxes stacked near the window. My belongings, already packed. Kieran's gone, which means his charity case is over. The boxes bore my father's handwriting from decades ago. Norman's tools, winter clothes. She'd gone through everything while I was at the funeral, planned this ambush while I grieved my son. "Let's talk like reasonable people," I managed. "I need time to figure things out." "Time ran out when Kieran died. Learn to survive on your own." The cruelty in her voice was surgical. 3 years I'd lived here, recovering from my stroke, believing this was home. The guest room where I'd slowly regained my strength. The kitchen where Kieran and I shared Sunday breakfasts. All of it suddenly foreign territory. A knock interrupted my shock. Lorraine's smile turned predatory as she opened the door. "Clement, perfect timing." The lawyer stepped inside, briefcase in hand, expensive coat dusted with February snow. Clement stern, I recognized him from Kieran's business dinners. His eyes avoided mine as he set legal documents on the coffee table. "Mr. Kellogg, everything is legally filed. You have 30 minutes to collect your belongings and vacate the premises." 30 minutes? My voice cracked. "I've lived here for 3 years. "As a guest," Lorraine interjected. "Kieran's guest. The house belongs to me now, and you're trespassing." Clement adjusted his glasses, still not meeting my eyes. "The will was probated yesterday. Mrs. Kellogg inherited all assets. This is completely legal." The room spun. Yesterday? While I was choosing flowers for my son's funeral, she was already claiming her prize. The boxes made sense now. She'd known exactly how long she had. Where am I supposed to go? "That's not my problem." Lorraine lifted one of the boxes, my father's old photo visible on top. "Figure it out like everyone else does." She carried it outside, dropping it onto the concrete with a bang that echoed through the neighborhood. The photo scattered across the sidewalk. My father in his Navy uniform, grinning at the camera. I scrambled to collect the pieces as Lorraine returned for another box. "This is insane," I said, following her. "Kieran would never have wanted this." "Kieran's dead." She dumped another box, my medication scattering across the driveway. "And I'm done pretending to care about his broken-down father." The words burned, but her efficiency scared me more. No emotion, no hesitation. This wasn't grief talking. This was calculation. She'd been waiting for this moment. Clement emerged with more boxes, loading them into my Honda Civic's trunk. The car Kieran had bought me after my stroke, when I couldn't drive my old pickup anymore. Now it was my only refuge. "Please," I said, as they stacked boxes in the back seat. "Just until I can find somewhere to go." "No." Lorraine slammed the car door. "You've had 3 years of free rent. Time to pay your own way." The medication bottle rolled under my car. I knelt to retrieve it, my arthritic joints protesting. When I stood, Clement was holding out a business card. "Storage facilities," he said quietly. "If you need temporary solutions." Lorraine snatched the card away. "He doesn't need solutions. He needs to leave." The last box contained my stroke therapy equipment, resistance bands, grip strengtheners, the tools that had helped me relearn how to write. Lorraine dumped it carelessly, the contents spilling across the seat. "Keys," she demanded. I handed over the house key, my fingers numb. She immediately tested it in the lock, then dropped it in her purse. The finality of that small action hit harder than everything else. "If you're not gone in 5 minutes, I'm calling the police." I climbed into the Honda, my hands shaking as I started the engine. In the rearview mirror, I watched Lorraine close the door of what had been my home. New locks clicked into place. The car pulled away from the curb, carrying me into the February darkness with nowhere to go. The Honda's engine hummed through empty Denver streets as shock gave way to crushing reality. 9 p.m. and I had nowhere to sleep. The heater barely worked, and I'd already spent an hour driving aimlessly, burning gas I couldn't afford to waste. Walmart on East Evans seemed like salvation. Bright lights, security cameras, other cars scattered across the lot. I parked near the back, away from the store entrance, but close enough to feel safe. The car seat reclined maybe 30 degrees. My spine ached already. February 15th became the longest night of my life. I dozed fitfully, waking every hour to restart the engine for heat. Around 3 a.m., a security guard tapped my window. Young kid, probably worked here through college. "You okay, sir?" "Car trouble," I lied, waiting for a tow. He nodded and moved on, but I knew I couldn't stay much longer. By dawn, my neck felt locked in position, and my left leg had gone completely numb. The stroke's aftermath always hit hardest when I couldn't move freely. McDonald's on Colfax opened at 6. I ordered coffee and used their bathroom to wash my face, brush my teeth in the tiny sink. The mirror showed a stranger, stubbled, hollow-eyed, wearing yesterday's funeral clothes. The woman cleaning tables kept glancing at me with pity. The social services office downtown didn't open until 9. I sat in their waiting room for 3 hours, watching younger people with children get called first. Finally, a tired woman with kind eyes reviewed my situation. "Mr. Kellogg, we have a 3-month waiting list for senior housing. Emergency shelters require you to leave each morning at 7 and return after 5. No storage for belongings." 3 months. I had maybe $200 cash and a car full of possessions. My medications cost $60 monthly, and I'd need gas money just to survive. "Isn't there anything temporary?" "Family assistance programs, but you'd need a relative to—" She stopped, reading my file. "I'm sorry, your son was your only family contact." Walking back to the car, memories ambushed me. Kieran at 25, nervous about starting his consulting business. I'd given him $15,000 from my retirement fund, my entire savings, to cover his first office rental in the Lodo district. He'd hugged me that day, promised he'd pay me back. He never did. Not because he was ungrateful, but because we both understood it wasn't a loan. It was a father's investment in his son's future. Now that future had died with him. The second night I tried a different Walmart in Aurora, hoping to avoid the same security guard. This time, I parked between 2 trucks, less visible. The car battery worried me. Starting it repeatedly for heat would eventually drain it completely, and I couldn't afford a jump start. I rationed the heat, running it 15 minutes every hour. My joints stiffened in the cold, and the medicine I'd scattered during the eviction was running low. Sleep came in fragments between shivering fits. February 17th brought the worst realization yet. I'd been surviving on McDonald's dollar menu, but even that was unsustainable. My last $20 bill had to cover gas and food for several more days. I bought a single hamburger and sat in the car, making it last an hour. Memory struck again. Thanksgiving dinner 2 years ago. Lorraine had been sick with flu for 3 weeks, and I'd taken care of her while Kieran traveled for business. Brought her homemade soup, managed her medications, even helped her shower when she was too weak to stand alone. She'd thanked me then, tears in her eyes, called me her hero, the woman who'd thrown my belongings into the street. On February 18th, desperation drove me to try calling her. Maybe if I explained my situation, appealed to whatever humanity remained. "The number you have dialed has been blocked by the subscriber." Not disconnected, blocked. She'd anticipated my call and cut off that possibility too. This wasn't grief or stress talking. This was systematic elimination of Norman Kellogg from her new life. Sitting in the McDonald's parking lot, I finally understood what I was dealing with. Lorraine hadn't acted impulsively. She'd planned this eviction while my son's body was still warm. Every detail calculated, every escape route sealed. The realization brought something unexpected. Not despair, but clarity. For the first time since Kieran's death, my mind felt sharp instead of foggy. The shock was wearing off, and underneath it, something harder was emerging. I started the Honda and drove toward the Denver Public Library. Tomorrow they'd be open, and I could think properly in the warmth, research my options, figure out what rights I might have. But tonight, settling into the car seat for another sleepless night, I made myself a promise. Lorraine thought she'd destroyed a broken old man. She was about to discover she'd awakened something else entirely. The Denver Public Library's Central Branch became my sanctuary. Warm, quiet, with public computers and bathrooms that felt like luxury after 3 days in the car. I arrived when they opened at 10 a.m., claimed a corner table, and began researching what Lorraine had done to me. Colorado inheritance law was complex but clear. As Kieran's widow, she automatically inherited everything unless he'd specifically provided otherwise. Community property laws meant the house, investments, even his business, all hers now. But something nagged at me. Kieran had been methodical about everything, especially finances. He'd shown me insurance papers, investment statements, always explaining his planning. Why wouldn't he have protected me somehow? The library's legal database gave me access to public records. I searched for Kieran's will, but the probate filing showed only basic information. Lorraine as sole beneficiary, estate valued at $2.3 million. The house alone was worth $800,000. My son had been wealthy, successful beyond anything I'd imagined. Around noon, my stomach cramping from hunger, I walked to the McDonald's next door. $5 meal was my daily budget now. As I ate slowly, making it last, I noticed the lawyer's business card still in my wallet. Howard Brent, family law, estate planning. Not Clement Stern, a different lawyer entirely. I returned to the library computers and researched Brent's firm. Established practice, good reputation, specializing in complex family trusts. Why would Kieran have used two different lawyers? The afternoon brought more questions. Kieran's business, Kellige Solutions, had been incorporated with a partner named Silas Drake. I found their website, impressive client list, offices in downtown Denver, but according to the probate filing, Lorraine now owned Kieran's share completely. Did Drake know about this? Had he agreed to suddenly have a new business partner? By closing time, my mind was spinning with possibilities. Too many loose ends, too many questions. Kieran had been private about business details, but he'd always been protective of me. The careful way he'd handled my stroke recovery, the gentle insistence I lived with him while I healed, none of that matched a man who'd leave his father homeless. The fourth night in the car was the coldest yet. February 19th brought a snow flurry that coated the windshield, making me feel even more trapped. But the discomfort couldn't dull the sharpness I felt now. The fog of grief was lifting, replaced by something I hadn't felt in years. Purpose. Friday morning, I was back at the library when it opened. This time I researched Clement Stern's practice, high-end divorce law, asset protection, some corporate work. Nothing about family estate planning. Why would Lorraine choose him over Howard Brent, unless she hadn't known about Brent? The thought hit me like electricity. What if Kieran had kept some arrangements private? Business owners often created separate trusts, protected assets their spouses didn't know about, especially if they had concerns about the marriage. I searched deeper into Kellige Solutions and found partnership agreements filed with the state. Technical language, but one clause stood out. Provisions for partner death that seemed to protect ongoing operations independent of estate inheritance. My heart rate picked up. If Kieran had structured things carefully, Lorraine might not own everything she thought she did. Around lunchtime, I made a decision that scared and thrilled me equally. I used the library phone to call Howard Brent's office. Brent, Morrison and Company, how may I help you? This is Norman Kellogg. I believe my son Kieran was a client. A pause, then, Mr. Kellogg, please hold. The wait stretched 2 minutes. When the receptionist returned, her voice had changed completely. Mr. Brent would like to meet with you immediately. Are you available this afternoon? Yes, but I should mention, I don't have money for legal fees right now. That won't be necessary, sir. Can you be here at 2 o'clock? I agreed, hands shaking as I hung up. Whatever this was, it was big enough that Howard Brent would see me immediately and waive his fees. That meant Kieran had left instructions, specific instructions about me. The walk to Brent's office took 30 minutes through downtown Denver. I cleaned up in a gas station bathroom first, trying to look presentable despite wearing the same clothes for 4 days. My reflection still showed a broken man, but behind my eyes, something was awakening. Lorraine thought she'd won, thought she'd destroyed me completely. She was about to learn that underestimating Norman Kellogg was the biggest mistake of her life. The library phone rang at exactly 10 a.m., cutting through my concentration as I reviewed notes about inheritance law. I almost ignored it. Who would call me here? But something made me reach for the receiver. Norman, thank goodness I found you. This is Silas Drake. My grip tightened on the phone. Kieran's business partner. I hadn't heard from him since the funeral. Silas, how did you... I've been trying to reach you for days. A mutual friend mentioned you might be here. His voice carried genuine concern mixed with business efficiency. Norman, I just heard about your situation. This is terrible. The words hit harder than expected. Someone actually cared about what happened to me. I need Howard Brent's address, I said, cutting through pleasantries. 3 days of survival had taught me to focus on essentials. Of course, but first, where are you staying? Do you need immediate help? I explained my circumstances, watching other library patrons pretend not to listen. Silas's silence stretched uncomfortably long. This is unconscionable, he finally said. Kieran would be furious. Listen, I'm covering Howard's contact information, but you need proper clothes for that meeting. There's a Goodwill on East Colfax. 30 minutes later, I stood at the bus stop with directions and $40 Silas had insisted on transferring to my account through his phone. The gesture meant more than the money. It proved I wasn't completely alone. The bus ride took 20 minutes through neighborhoods I barely recognized. Denver had changed during my 3 years of recovery, becoming more expensive, more polished. The Goodwill store occupied what used to be a small department store, its windows displaying secondhand hope. Inside, fluorescent lights hummed over racks of donated clothing. The smell of fabric softener mixed with something indefinably sad. The scent of lives disrupted. Possessions abandoned. I found the men's section and began searching for dignity. The navy suit hung between a sports coat and a winter parka, both too large for my frame. But this one looked different, well-made, barely worn, probably donated by someone's estate. I held it up to my chest, checking the measurements. That's a good choice, said the elderly clerk, approaching with practiced kindness. Quality wool blend. Should serve you well for important occasions. Important occasions. I hadn't had one of those in years. In the changing room, I studied my reflection carefully. The suit fit better than I'd hoped, transforming my appearance from homeless man to someone who might belong in professional settings. The fabric held its shape, lending structure to my posture. But it was more than clothing. For the first time since Kieran's death, I looked like Norman Kellogg, the man who'd raised a successful son, built engines with his hands, commanded respect in his small corner of the world. I paid $14 for the suit, leaving me with enough for bus fare back to the library. The transaction felt like an investment rather than an expense. That evening, I found a quiet corner of McDonald's and practiced conversation topics, writing key points on napkins. What to tell Howard about Lorraine's actions. How to present my situation without sounding desperate. Questions about Kieran's business arrangements. The bathroom mirror became my rehearsal space. I practiced introducing myself, explaining my circumstances, asking for guidance. Each repetition felt stronger than the last. February 23rd passed in preparation. I researched Howard's law firm online, memorized the address, planned my route. The Denver Public Library became my headquarters, its computers and quiet spaces allowing me to think strategically for the first time in weeks. By February 24th, I felt ready. The Goodwill suit hung in my car, pressed and prepared. My questions were organized, my presentation rehearsed. The homeless desperation was fading, replaced by something I'd almost forgotten: purpose. Standing in the library parking lot that evening, I called Howard's office and scheduled an appointment for the next afternoon. The receptionist's professional courtesy reminded me that I was no longer invisible. Tomorrow would bring answers. Tonight, I allowed myself to hope. Howard Brent's office occupied the 3rd floor of a converted brick building in Lodo, its tall windows overlooking the historic district where Kieran had started his business years ago. I arrived 15 minutes early, wearing the Goodwill suit and carrying myself like a man with legitimate business to conduct. The receptionist, a woman about my daughter-in-law's age, greeted me with genuine warmth. "Mr. Kellogg, Mr. Brent is expecting you. Would you like coffee while you wait?" Coffee, real coffee, served in actual ceramic mugs. I accepted gratefully, settling into a leather chair that reminded me of better times. Howard emerged exactly at 2 o'clock. A distinguished man in his late 50s with silver hair and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. But his expression shifted the moment he saw me. "Norman, He stepped forward, studying my face with obvious concern. "Your condition shocks me. Please come into my office immediately." His office reflected decades of successful practice: rich wood furnishings, legal volumes lining the walls, personal photographs suggesting family and community involvement. He guided me to a conversation area away from his formal desk. "Tell me everything," he said, settling across from me with the intensity of someone accustomed to hearing difficult stories. I explained Lorraine's ambush, the calculated cruelty of timing my eviction during Kieran's funeral, the 3 days living in my car, the social services disappointment, the systematic destruction of my dignity. Howard listened without interruption, his expression growing darker with each detail. "She threw me out like unwanted trash," I concluded. "Changed the locks while I was burying my son." Howard remained silent for a long moment, then walked to a large safe in the corner of his office. His fingers worked the combination with practiced precision. "Your son was a very forward-thinking man, Mr. Kellogg." He withdrew a sealed envelope bearing Kieran's distinctive handwriting. Kieran anticipated difficulties might arise after his death. My heart rate accelerated. "What kind of difficulties?" "The kind that require careful planning and legal protection." Howard returned to his chair, holding the envelope like sacred text. "Kieran left specific instructions about your welfare, Norman. Very specific instructions." The room felt charged with possibility. "Instructions about what?" "About ensuring his father never faces exactly the situation you've just described." Howard's smile carried satisfaction, mixed with paternal concern. Kieran may have seemed trusting in his marriage, but he was nobody's fool in business matters. I leaned forward, hardly daring to breathe. "Are you saying—" "I'm saying Kieran prepared for multiple contingencies, including the possibility that his widow might not share his sense of family obligation." Howard set the envelope on the coffee table between us. "The document I filed with probate court represented only part of your son's estate planning." "Only part." The words echoed through my mind like thunder. "But first, we need to address your immediate situation." Howard stood and moved to his desk, retrieving a business card. "My mother, Edith, lives in a guest house by Cherry Creek Reservoir. She's 83, sharp as a tack, and always complains about rattling around that place alone." He handed me the card with an address written on the back. "She'd be delighted to have a responsible gentleman as a house guest while we sort through your son's arrangements. No charge, of course. She values the company more than rental income." I stared at the card, overwhelmed by the sudden reversal of fortune. "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll accept help when it's offered." Howard returned to his chair, his expression serious again. "Kieran worried about leaving you vulnerable, Norman. He spent considerable time ensuring that wouldn't happen." "When can I learn the details?" "Soon, but certain legal procedures must be followed, and I suspect Lorraine will not accept revelations gracefully." Howard's smile held anticipation. "We'll arrange a formal reading once all parties are properly notified." I left Howard's office with directions to the guest house and something I hadn't felt in weeks: genuine hope. Not the desperate optimism of a drowning man, but the steady confidence of someone who might have allies after all. The drive to Cherry Creek took 30 minutes through winding roads that climbed into foothills overlooking the reservoir. Edith Brent's property sat on a private lane lined with cottonwoods, the main house elegant but welcoming, the guest cottage perfect for someone who needed sanctuary. When I knocked on the cottage door, it opened to reveal a tiny woman with white hair and eyes that missed nothing. "You must be Norman," she said, stepping aside to welcome me in. Howard called ahead. "I've got fresh coffee brewing and dinner in an hour. We'll get you settled properly." For the first time since Kieran's death, I felt like I was home. 3 days at Edith's guest house had restored more than my dignity. It had awakened something I'd thought Lorraine had destroyed forever: purpose. This morning, February 28th, I sat at the small kitchen table reviewing notes Howard had provided when gravel crunched in the driveway. Through the window, I watched a silver sedan pull up aggressively, parking at an angle that blocked the entire drive. Lorraine emerged like a storm system, her designer coat whipping in the wind as she stalked toward the cottage. "Norman!" Her voice carried across the yard with practiced authority. "Get out here! We need to talk!" Edith appeared in the main house doorway, her 83-year-old frame radiating protective indignation. I stepped outside, wearing clean clothes and a confidence that clearly surprised my former daughter-in-law. "Hello, Lorraine. You're trespassing on private property. Don't you dare lecture me about property rights." She advanced until we stood 3 feet apart, her face flushed with fury. "You think you can outsmart me, old man? Everything belongs to me. Everything. We'll see what your husband had to say about that." The words emerged calmly, carrying weight I hadn't possessed weeks ago. Lorraine's expression shifted from anger to something sharper, fear disguised as rage. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Exactly what it sounds like." I folded my arms, maintaining eye contact. Kieran was thorough in his business dealings. Very thorough. Edith approached from the main house, her silver hair perfectly styled despite the early hour. She moved with the dignity of someone accustomed to managing difficult situations through sheer force of proper upbringing. "Young lady, you're disturbing my guest with your shouting. Please lower your voice or leave my property immediately." Lorraine whirled toward her, abandoning all pretense of respectability. "Your guest? This pathetic old fool belongs in a nursing home, not playing house with strangers." "That pathetic old fool," Edith replied with Arctic precision, "served his country, raised a successful son, and deserves basic human decency. Qualities you seem to lack entirely." "Stay out of this, grandmother. This is family business. Norman is my guest. That makes it my business." Edith positioned herself between Lorraine and me, a protective gesture that would have seemed comical if not for the steel in her voice. "And I am not your grandmother, young woman. Thank goodness." Lorraine's composure cracked completely. "You people have no idea what you're dealing with. I have lawyers. I have court orders. I'll bury all of you in legal paperwork." "Bring your lawyers," I said quietly. "Bring your court orders. We'll be ready." The certainty in my voice stopped her cold. For 3 weeks, she'd faced a broken man begging for mercy. Now, she confronted someone who knew things she didn't, someone with allies and resources she hadn't anticipated. "What do you know?" The question emerged as a hiss. "What did that fool husband of mine tell you?" "Nothing," I admitted, but he told his lawyers quite a lot. Lorraine's eyes widened as the implications hit her. Kieran had been meticulous about business documentation, obsessive about protecting assets and planning contingencies. If he'd suspected problems in his marriage— "You're bluffing. Kieran trusted me completely." "Kieran loved you," I corrected. Trust and love aren't always the same thing. She backed toward her car, her confidence evaporating. "This isn't over. When I'm finished with you, you'll wish you'd stayed in that parking lot where you belonged." "Perhaps," I replied. "But I won't be facing you alone." Lorraine slammed the car door and reversed out of the driveway with unnecessary violence, gravel spraying against the cottage windows. We watched until her taillights disappeared around the bend. "Well," Edith said, smoothing her hair, "that was illuminating. Your daughter-in-law has a vocabulary that would embarrass a sailor." I found myself smiling, actually smiling, for the first time since Kieran's funeral. She's not my daughter-in-law anymore. She made that clear 3 weeks ago. What will she do next? "Panic," I said with satisfaction. "And panicked people make mistakes." Edith nodded approvingly. "Howard raised me to appreciate good strategy. Would you like more coffee? I suspect we'll need our strength for what's coming." As we walked back toward the cottage, I realized something fundamental had changed. 3 weeks ago, Lorraine had destroyed Norman Kellogg, the victim. Today she'd met Norman Kellogg, the adversary. The conference room at Howard's office felt different this time, formal, charged with legal gravity. At exactly 3 o'clock on March 3rd, all parties sat around the polished mahogany table. Lorraine wore her best black suit, radiating confidence. Clement Stern flanked her with his briefcase open, legal pads ready. I sat across from them wearing my Goodwill suit, calmer than I had felt in weeks. Howard opened the proceedings with a professional precision. "We're here for the formal reading of Kieran Kellogg's last will and testament, dated September 15th, 2023. The date surprised me. Kieran had updated his will just 5 months ago, during what I'd thought was a happy period in his marriage. "The primary bequests are straightforward," Howard continued, reading from official documents. "The house at 1247 Cherry Creek Drive passes to Lorraine Wilmer Kellogg, along with all furnishings and personal effects. The business assets of Kellogg Solutions transfer to Mrs. Kellogg as sole proprietor." Lorraine's smile grew predatory. She'd won everything significant, just as she'd expected. Mr. Norman Kellogg receives a monthly stipend of $800 from a designated pension fund, sufficient for modest accommodations. $800, barely enough for a studio apartment and groceries. Lorraine's victory was complete, or so she believed. Finally, justice prevails. She turned toward me with unconcealed satisfaction. I hope this settles any delusions about challenging my inheritance. Clement nodded approvingly, already organizing papers for departure. But Howard remained seated, his expression carefully neutral. There is one additional matter. He withdrew a sealed envelope from his safe. Kieran left specific instructions for a private consultation with Mr. Kellogg regarding supplementary arrangements. The temperature in the room shifted. Clement's head snapped up from his legal pads. What supplementary arrangements? We have the right to know about all estate provisions. Actually, you don't. Howard's voice carried decades of legal authority. Colorado law permits private bequests and personal consultations. This envelope is addressed specifically to Mr. Norman Kellogg for individual review. Lorraine's confident expression flickered. That's ridiculous. What could Kieran possibly have left that pathetic old man? Perhaps we should discover that together, Clement interjected, his professional instincts sensing danger. This is unacceptable. His voice rose with lawyerly indignation. Full disclosure is required for proper estate administration. Howard remained unmoved. The primary will has been read in full compliance with legal requirements. This additional document pertains to personal matters between father and son. Privacy laws apply. Lorraine stood abruptly, her chair scraping against hardwood. I won't allow secret arrangements to undermine my inheritance. Your inheritance remains exactly as stated, Howard replied calmly. This consultation doesn't affect the primary will provisions. The distinction was subtle, but crucial. Whatever Kieran had planned operated independently of the main estate. Lorraine understood the implication even if she couldn't articulate it legally. When will this consultation occur? Clement demanded. Immediately, for those who wish to remain. Howard's meaning was clear. Everyone else should leave. Lorraine gathered her purse with sharp, angry movements. This isn't finished, Norman. I'll discover what games you're playing. I'm not playing games, I replied quietly. I'm just honoring my son's wishes. Clement stuffed papers into his briefcase with barely controlled frustration. We'll be monitoring this situation closely. Any irregularities will be challenged immediately. They left together, Lorraine's heels clicking angrily down the hallway. Through the window, I watched them argue beside Clement's Mercedes before driving away separately. Howard waited until their car sounds faded before moving to comfortable chairs away from the formal table. The shift felt symbolic, from legal proceedings to personal consultation. Your son was remarkable, Norman. He held the sealed envelope with something approaching reverence. This planning required months of careful preparation. My hands trembled slightly as I accepted the envelope. Kieran's handwriting addressed it simply. For Dad, when justice is required. The sealed envelope felt heavier than paper should. Howard moved to the window, giving me privacy while remaining available for questions. I broke the seal carefully, revealing multiple documents and what appeared to be a memory card. The letter on top bore yesterday's date in Kieran's precise handwriting. Dad, if you're reading this, my suspicions about Lorraine proved correct. I'm sorry I couldn't confront her directly. She's more dangerous than you realize. Instead, I created a financial scheme to protect you from her final blow. My breath caught. Final blow. He'd known something terrible was coming. 2 years ago, I began noticing changes in Lorraine's behavior. Small things, questions about my business, sudden interest in estate planning, conversations with divorce lawyers she thought I didn't know about. I hired a private investigator and discovered she'd been planning to take everything and abandon you the moment I died. The words hit like physical blows. 2 years. He'd known for 2 years and said nothing. I couldn't prove her intentions legally, but I could prepare for them. The main will gives her everything she expects. The house, the business, enough to satisfy her greed. But I moved the real assets offshore through a series of complex financial instruments. $8 million, Dad. Accessible only through biometric identification that only you possess. $8 million. The number wouldn't process properly in my mind. Howard approached quietly. Would you like me to explain the technical arrangements? I nodded, still reeling from the revelation. My son had been protecting me from devastation I never saw coming. Kieran spent 18 months creating an unbreakable financial structure, Howard explained, settling into the chair beside me. Swiss banks, Cayman accounts, legal trusts spanning multiple jurisdictions. The beauty is its simplicity. Everything requires your fingerprint and retinal scan for access. She can't touch it? She doesn't even know it exists. The main estate she inherited contains roughly 10% of Kieran's actual wealth. The rest belongs to you now. I returned to the letter, my vision blurring with tears. Forgive me for not telling you sooner. I hoped my suspicions were wrong, that Lorraine might prove worthy of the love I offered her. But I couldn't risk your security on hope. You sacrificed everything for my success. Your retirement fund, your dreams, your independence. This is my way of ensuring you never depend on anyone else's kindness again. The memory of giving Kieran $15,000 flooded back. My entire life savings handed over without hesitation. He'd never forgotten that sacrifice. There's more, Howard said softly, producing a small device. He recorded a video message for this moment. The screen flickered to life, and suddenly my son sat before me, speaking directly to the camera with the intensity I remembered from his business presentations. Dad, forgive me for hiding the truth about Lorraine. Watching her manipulate you while planning your destruction was the hardest thing I've ever endured. But this scheme will protect you from her final blow and give you power she never anticipated. His image paused, then continued with visible emotion. I love you more than I could ever express. You taught me everything about honor, sacrifice, and protecting family. Now, it's my turn to protect you. The video ended, leaving silence broken only by my ragged breathing. Howard waited patiently as I processed the overwhelming magnitude of my son's gift. What happens next? I finally managed. Tomorrow we visit the bank. The primary safety deposit box contains access codes and additional instructions. But Norman, Howard's expression grew serious. This isn't just about money. Kieran left you tools for psychological warfare. He wanted you to have every advantage when facing her. I folded the letter carefully, understanding for the first time that my son's love had reached beyond death to transform me from victim to victor. Then let's give Lorraine exactly what she deserves. Howard drove me to the First National Bank downtown the next morning, his luxury sedan a stark contrast to my usual Honda Civic. The marble lobby spoke of old money and established power, the kind of institution that would honor complex international arrangements without asking uncomfortable questions. The banker who met us, a distinguished woman named Patricia Wells, treated our visit with professional discretion that suggested this wasn't her first encounter with Kieran's planning. Mr. Kellogg, your son prepared thoroughly for this moment. She guided us to a private elevator leading to the safety deposit box vault. The biometric scanners are calibrated specifically for your identification. The vault felt like a fortress. Steel walls, multiple security systems, absolute privacy. When Patricia opened box 1247, I understood why Kieran had chosen that number. The same as his house address, where Lorraine now lived in ignorant triumph. Inside lay documents that would change everything. Bank routing numbers for accounts in Switzerland and the Cayman Islands. Legal papers establishing my sole ownership of assets Lorraine couldn't imagine. And another video device labeled Final Instructions. I'll give you privacy, Patricia said, withdrawing to the vault entrance. Howard remained beside me as I activated the device. Kieran's face appeared again, but this recording felt different, more strategic, less emotional. Dad, if you're watching this, you've accessed the financial protection I created, but money alone won't give you justice. Lorraine destroyed your dignity because she thought you were powerless. Time to prove her wrong. The screen shifted to display photographs and documents I'd never seen. Lorraine meeting with divorce lawyers 6 months before Kieran's death. Financial records showing her attempts to transfer assets secretly. Email communications revealing her true feelings about me. Words so cruel I flinched reading them. She called you the worthless old burden in correspondence with her lawyer, Kieran's voice continued. Said disposing of you would be cleaning house after the funeral. I documented everything, Dad. Every insult, every plan, every moment of calculated cruelty. The evidence was devastating. Legal proof of premeditation, psychological manipulation, financial scheming, more than enough to destroy her reputation and credibility. Use this information wisely. Lorraine respects only power and fears only exposure. When you're ready to reclaim your dignity, these tools will help you do it properly. The video ended with a final message. You raised me to fight honorably, Dad. Now fight for yourself. We returned to the guest house by noon, my mind spinning with possibilities. Edith took one look at my expression and prepared tea without asking questions. The transformation is remarkable, Howard observed, reviewing documents at the kitchen table. Yesterday, Lorraine had everything. Today you hold all the cards, and she doesn't even know the game has changed. That afternoon, I studied every piece of evidence Kieran had compiled. The pattern was clear. Lorraine had spent 2 years preparing to destroy me the moment Kieran died. She'd researched nursing homes, investigated ways to declare me incompetent, even consulted with lawyers about forcing a guardianship. But she'd made one crucial error. She'd underestimated the depth of a father's love and a son's protective instinct. March 5th passed in strategic preparation. I memorized key financial figures, practiced presenting evidence calmly, prepared for psychological warfare. Edith helped me rehearse conversations, playing devil's advocate with the sharp intelligence that had clearly influenced her son's legal career. Confidence, Norman, she advised over dinner. Lorraine's weapon was your desperation. Remove that, and she becomes the desperate one. By March 6th, I felt ready. The scared, broken man Lorraine had thrown into the street no longer existed. In his place stood someone with resources, allies, and a plan that would give Lorraine exactly what she'd tried to give me: complete powerlessness. Howard called that evening with final arrangements. I've scheduled a meeting for tomorrow afternoon. Told Clement we discovered irregularities requiring immediate discussion. They'll come expecting to challenge your consultation. And instead, they'll discover that Norman Kellogg has become someone they never anticipated facing. I spent the evening at the guest house writing notes, organizing evidence, preparing for psychological warfare. Tomorrow would determine whether justice meant anything in a world where cruelty often triumphed over kindness. But tonight, for the first time since Kieran's death, I felt something stronger than hope. I felt power. The legal papers arrived at the guest house on March 7th, delivered by a process server who apologized for the intrusion. Clement Stern had filed an incompetency lawsuit claiming I was mentally unfit to manage financial affairs and needed court-appointed guardianship. They're desperate, Howard observed, reviewing the documents at Edith's kitchen table. This kind of legal fishing expedition usually backfires spectacularly. The court-ordered psychological evaluation took place 2 days later at Denver General Hospital. Dr. Patricia Martinez, a clinical psychologist with 30 years' experience, conducted comprehensive cognitive testing that lasted 3 hours. Mr. Kellogg demonstrates complete mental competency, she told Howard afterward. Above average cognitive function for his age group, excellent memory retention, superior problem-solving abilities. Whoever suggested incompetency clearly doesn't know this man. While I passed psychological evaluation with flying colors, Clement was scouring Denver for witnesses willing to testify against my character. He contacted my former neighbors, Kieran's business associates, even staff at the McDonald's, where I'd bought cheap meals during my homeless period. Every attempt backfired. Neighbors remembered me as helpful and reliable. Business associates spoke of my pride in Kieran's success and my support during startup years. Even the McDonald's manager, when approached, defended my dignity during difficult circumstances. Nobody will speak against you, Howard reported with satisfaction. Clement's fishing expedition caught nothing but community respect. By March 11th, Lorraine's desperation reached critical mass. She called requesting a private meeting at a coffee shop downtown, claiming she wanted to discuss family matters reasonably. I arrived to find her hunched over an untouched latte, her usual confidence replaced by something approaching panic. She'd lost weight since our confrontation at the guest house, and her designer clothes hung awkwardly on her diminished frame. Norman, we need to talk. Her voice carried none of its earlier authority. I'm listening. This lawsuit, it's getting expensive. Legal fees are mounting. She leaned forward, desperation poorly disguised as negotiation. How much do you want? 50,000? 100? Just drop whatever legal challenge you're planning. The offer revealed everything. She suspected I had resources, but couldn't imagine their scope. More importantly, she was offering me money that had been mine anyway, filtered through Kieran's earnings, built on my initial investment. You think this is about money, Lorraine? Everything's about money. She pulled out her checkbook with shaking hands. Name your price. 200,000? I can liquidate some investments. Keep your money. I stood to leave, enjoying the reversal of our power dynamic. You'll need every penny for what's coming. Her face went pale. What do you mean? What's coming? Justice. I walked toward the door, then turned back. Soon you'll be the one begging, Lorraine, just like you wanted me to do. That afternoon, I visited the bank with Howard and accessed my offshore accounts for the first time. The process was surprisingly simple: fingerprint scan, retinal identification, signature verification. Within minutes, I had transferred $200,000 to my local checking account. The bank manager, Patricia Wells, handled the transaction with professional discretion. Will you be making additional transfers, Mr. Kellogg? Eventually, but this amount should handle immediate needs. Driving back to the guest house, Howard couldn't contain his satisfaction. She offered you money that was already yours, demanded you drop challenges you haven't even filed, and begged for mercy from someone she threw into the street. The irony is perfect. Kieran would appreciate the justice, I replied. His plan is working exactly as intended. That evening, Edith served dinner with particular care, celebrating what she recognized as a turning point. Your son would be proud, she said simply. You've reclaimed everything she tried to steal. Not everything, I corrected. Not yet. Howard's office felt like a courtroom on March 15th. All parties had been summoned for what he termed an urgent legal matter requiring immediate resolution. Lorraine arrived with Clement, both carrying themselves with forced confidence that fooled no one. I sat across from them wearing a new suit, not from Goodwill this time, but from Brooks Brothers, purchased with funds that represented just a fraction of my newfound resources. The contrast was deliberate and effective. We're here to address irregularities in the Kellogg estate, Howard began formally. Mr. Norman Kellogg has information that requires disclosure under Colorado law. Clement straightened in his chair. What irregularities? The will was perfectly clear. The will you read was perfectly clear, I corrected. But it wasn't complete. I placed a folder on the conference table, its contents organized with the precision Kieran had taught me in business matters. Bank statements, offshore account documentation, biometric access records, evidence of a financial structure Lorraine couldn't have imagined. Kieran predicted your actions, Lorraine. Every move you made, every cruel word you spoke, every plan you hatched, he documented everything. Her face drained of color. What are you talking about? Your husband spent 2 years watching you prepare to destroy me. I opened the folder, revealing photographs and financial records. He knew about your meetings with divorce lawyers, your research into nursing homes, your calculations about eliminating what you called the worthless old burden. Clement leaned forward, studying the documents with growing alarm. Where did these come from? Kieran's private security arrangements, Howard answered. Completely legal surveillance of his own household and business affairs. Lorraine's hands shook as she reached for the papers. This is impossible. Kieran trusted me completely. Kieran loved you, I corrected. But love doesn't mean blindness. When he discovered your true nature, he protected himself and his family accordingly. I produced the bank statements, watching her expression shift from confusion to horror as the numbers registered. $8 million in accounts bearing my name and biometric signatures. Where's the rest of the money? She whispered. What rest? Howard asked innocently. The estate was worth $16 million. Where's the other $8 million? The admission hung in the air like a confession. She'd known the true value all along, had researched Kieran's worth down to the last dollar in preparation for her calculated strike. Kieran's true estate totaled exactly $16 million, Howard confirmed. You inherited precisely half through legal marriage provisions. The other half belongs to his father through prearranged financial instruments that operate independently of marriage law. Clement's face went ashen as he understood the implications. Offshore trusts, international banking arrangements, Swiss accounts, Cayman investments, multiple jurisdiction protections, I explained calmly. All established legally, all accessible only through biometric identification that only I possess. This is fraud, Lorraine screamed. Those assets belong to me. Actually, they never did. Howard produced additional documentation. Kieran established these arrangements using personal funds that predated your marriage. The $8 million represents return on investment from his father's original contribution to business startup, plus accumulated interest and strategic growth. I remembered that $15,000 sacrifice that had launched Kieran's career. My retirement fund, given without hesitation to support my son's dreams. Now it had grown into millions, protected by financial planning I couldn't have imagined. You threw me out believing you'd taken everything, I said quietly. But greed made you reveal your true nature to a son who loved his father enough to protect him beyond the grave. Lorraine collapsed into her chair, the magnitude of her losses finally comprehending. She'd gained $8 million through marriage, but lost another $8 million through cruelty. Simple human decency would have given her access to everything. Now you understand, I concluded. Every dollar you thought you'd stolen through manipulation represents exactly half of what you could have received through simple kindness. Clement gathered his papers with shaking hands, his professional reputation in ruins. Howard's superior legal strategy had made him look like an amateur, his aggressive tactics exposed as ignorance masquerading as expertise. Justice sometimes comes late, Howard observed with satisfaction, but it comes. April brought Denver's transformation from winter bleakness to spring possibility, mirroring my own rebirth. I spent the first week house hunting in Washington Park, one of the city's most prestigious neighborhoods, guided by a realtor who treated my financial credentials with respectful professionalism. The Victorian mansion I chose sat on a corner lot lined with century-old elm trees, its wraparound porch and bay windows speaking of established dignity. At $800,000, it cost exactly what Kieran's house had been worth, the house where Lorraine now struggled with mounting mortgage payments and declining property values. "Congratulations, Mr. Kellogg," the realtor said as we finalized the purchase. "You'll be very happy here." Moving day required professional services to transport belongings I'd accumulated during weeks of careful shopping, furniture that reflected taste rather than necessity, artwork that brought joy rather than filling space, a home office equipped for managing investments rather than searching for survival. Edith visited during the settling process, her delight evident as she toured rooms that showcased financial security and personal dignity. "Kieran would be so proud," she said, admiring the library where his business books now shared shelves with volumes I'd always wanted to read. "He made this possible," I replied. "Every comfort, every security, every moment of peace. It's his gift to me." Meanwhile, Lorraine's world collapsed with systematic precision. The house in Cherry Creek went on the market at reduced price, financial pressures forcing a quick sale that would barely cover mounting debts. Clement Stern's aggressive legal tactics had backfired so spectacularly that his reputation suffered permanent damage, other clients questioning his competence. Howard visited my new home regularly, ostensibly for legal consultations, but actually for friendship that had grown from professional obligation. "Justice has a beautiful symmetry," he observed one afternoon as we shared coffee in my sunroom. "She gets exactly what she tried to give you: homelessness, financial insecurity, social isolation." "Natural consequences," I corrected. "I didn't cause her downfall. Her own choices did." The final encounter came in late April, a chance meeting outside the courthouse where Lorraine was filing bankruptcy papers. She looked haggard, her designer clothes replaced by discount store alternatives, her confidence destroyed by circumstances she'd created through her own cruelty. "Norman, please." She approached hesitantly, desperation replacing the arrogance I remembered. "I know I made mistakes, but I need help. Just temporary assistance until I get back on my feet." The role reversal was complete. 3 months ago, I'd been the one begging for mercy, pleading for basic human compassion from someone who'd responded with calculated cruelty. Now she stood in that position, asking for the kindness she'd refused to show. "Learn to survive on your own, Lorraine." I used her exact words from that February afternoon, delivered without malice but with complete finality. "Figure it out like everyone else does." Her face crumpled as she recognized the echo of her own cruelty returned with interest. But I felt no satisfaction in her suffering, only completion of justice that had taken its natural course. That evening, I visited Kieran's grave for the first time since the funeral. The headstone bore simple inscription: "Beloved son and father." Words that captured the love that had motivated everything. Justice has prevailed, I said quietly, placing fresh flowers beside the marker. Your plan worked perfectly, son. Your father is safe, and the woman who tried to destroy him learned that greed costs more than generosity ever could. Spring wind rustled through cemetery trees, carrying the scent of new growth and fresh possibilities. Standing in my expensive coat beside my luxury car, financially secure for the rest of my life, I understood that the greatest victory wasn't wealth accumulated, but dignity restored. Kieran's love had reached beyond death to transform me from victim to victor, proving that family loyalty transcends even the grave when expressed through sophisticated planning and unwavering protection. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.